Hello everyone, it's me Daniel again. You see the artwork back here, it's stuff my cousin did years ago, and you can see it there. Today marks my 1 year anniversary episode, although it's well past that since my first episode was on June 27th, 2025, and now here it is, July 9th, 2026, and am just now filming this. So, I noticed that most of my most watched videos were of Spider-Man reviews, and I apologize if anyone thought that this whole channel was just going to be about Spider-Man and nothing else, and that's what I've noticed. I actually tend to want to do just Marvel and DC, though I went away from that when I did the Star Trek one, of course, and I think I better just get right into the review at this point. So, we're looking at a What If comic, and this isn't the one we're looking at today, but this is the first What If comic I ever read as a kid. What if Captain America had formed the Avengers? And What If was a unique series in that it really just was taking a comic book story and changing it up a bit to be maybe a bit darker or to have a grimmer ending. Captain America, when he formed the Avengers in that What If comic, it was an alternate take where Red Skull and the Nazis took over the world, but Captain America still got frozen in ice. And Red Skull got a clone of Steve Rogers, Captain America, to do his bidding for him, and then took over his own body, as it turns out in the end. And so there's that. But what we're looking at today is this. What if Spider-Man had never become a crime fighter? To understand this story, you may need to go back and watch my Amazing Spider-Man #1 and my One More Day review, because I talk a lot about the characters in this comic then. So, let's dig into what if Spider-Man had never become a crime fighter and see how this comic is. This cover is pretty good. It shows a TV stage where a man is behind a camera filming Spider-Man, who is wearing a cape similar to the red part of his costume, obviously imitating Superman. A guy in a pink-colored suit is introducing him to everyone. That looks very silly. This shows that Spider-Man ends up becoming an entertainer on TV instead of a superhero. The narration on the cover says, "The one you've all been waiting for! Uncle Ben's alive and well, and Spider-Man's in the spotlight, but death is waiting in the wings!" The comic starts off with this title page. It says here that the writer of this comic is Peter Gillis and the artist is Pat Broderick. Peter Gillis wrote another What If comic I like and own called What If Spider-Man's Uncle Ben Had Lived, where Aunt May gets shot by the criminal instead of Uncle Ben. Pat Broderick wrote some other comics I have, such as the Doom 2099, though I haven't read it in its entirety, and the 1990s comic titled Spider-Man. So he's written many good comics, a lot of which I like. So we saw this scene where it shows Uatu the Watcher talking. I briefly mentioned Uatu the Watcher in my Silver Surfer review last year, but he is from a race of people who watch everyone on every planet, but do nothing to interfere with any bad events that happen. Though he broke that rule in Fantastic Four number 48, when he warned the Fantastic Four that Galactus was coming to Earth. I'm using the voice he had when he appeared in What If mode on the second level of the Spider-Man game that was on Dreamcast, PlayStation 1, Nintendo 64, and PC. I actually first played it on PC, by the way. I am the Watcher. Here is a tragedy with uncommon participants. Spider-Man, who is standing in front of Uncle Ben's grave, says, "Uncle Ben, I failed you! It's my fault you are dead!" Anyway, on to the next scene, where it shows Peter with Uncle Ben and Aunt May, and Aunt May is saying she's cooked him his favorite breakfast, wheat cakes. I guess that's pancakes made with wheat. I like wheat bread, but I don't think I'd want
pancakes made with wheat. Does not sound appetizing. Uncle Ben jokes about how Aunt May shouldn't feed him too much because he can barely out-wrestle him now. Then it goes over his original origin, where he goes on a TV show and then refuses to stop a thief a police officer asked him to stop because he has things to do. Then, of course, the scene after where he goes to Aunt May's and Uncle Ben's house where the police are there and a policeman tells him his uncle was killed by a robber and finds out it's the guy that he didn't stop. Then we cut to this narration by the Watcher. There are turning points in all men's lives, critical instants when a single decision can determine the course of one man's future. But at every turning point, more than one decision is possible.
Like, what if Arnold Schwarzenegger decided to do Commando 2 and Die Hard as we know it never existed?
Lately, I have learned there exist worlds where these other decisions are realized.
Like, what should I have for dinner? Should I have pizza or should I have chicken thighs, mashed potatoes and gravy, and green beans? Or maybe I should just have pizza, chicken thighs, mashed potatoes and gravy, and green beans. That is a brilliant plan.
Countless alternate realities which branch off from the world you know at major critical instants.
Like a world where Sam Raimi did Gwen Stacy instead of Mary Jane in the first Spider-Man movie and killed her off, thus introducing Mary Jane and Black Cat into Spider-Man 2 and then making Spider-Man 2 and 3 better.
Watch once again this most critical instant in the life of young Peter Parker and witness how another decision altered reality. So Spider-Man witnesses this cop chasing the thief and then thinks to himself that he could do himself a favor by stopping the thief. So he does so. Thus, Spider-Man in this world averts tragedy, but this is not a noble triumph, for it is done for publicity. Spider-Man tells the cop, "Now go tell the TV news people." The cop says, "Don't worry, I will tell the whole world." Then we cut to J. Jonah Jameson, who says, "Disgusting yellow journalism! This glorification of so-called superheroes upsets me, Miss Brandt. Do you know why it upsets me?" Betty Brant is rightfully freaked out at her boss angrily getting close to her face with a cigar in his mouth. She tells him to calm down. Then we cut to the next scene where Spider-Man is meeting a fictional Hollywood movie producer named J.B. Priest. Spidey says to him, "And I can make you money, J.B." J.B. responds, "Sure, your ratings are good." Spider-Man interrupts him and says, "And they'll be better, J.B. The public says it wants Spider-Man, it demands Spider-Man. And you can put him on the big screen." J.B. responds, "You have drive, young man," and J.B. likes drive. But to base a movie off a few gimmicks? Spider replies, "Gimmicks? You don't get it. Spider-Man is no gimmick. He's the real thing." Then he shows off his super agility to JB, who is shocked and agrees to get out the contract. Then we cut to Peter at school where Flash Thompson says, "Well, well, well, if it isn't puny Parker. Sure you can carry some of those books?" Liz Allen says, "Flash, don't!" Peter replies, "Mr. Thompson, you'll kindly take your paws off me. I don't like nobody's touching me." Flash Thompson says, "Huh?" Pat Broderick drew the perfect snobbish entitled face for Peter here. It's so good.
Funnily enough, Flash Thompson would later serve in Vietnam, and then in a later war he'd fight and lose his legs. And he later became Venom for a while for the government, and now he's anti-Venom working for the government. Flash Thompson is far from a nobody.
Then, in this next scene, Uncle Ben, who is with Aunt May on their porch, asks Peter where he is going. Peter lies and says he is going to help a friend. Then it turns out he went to go host the Johnny Carson Show, a famous show from the 60s and 70s. I am going to skip the dialogue here, but he talks to a woman named Cheryl and ends up advertising a kind of deodorant. Then he gets interrupted by a bad news report. It turns out J. Jonah Jameson's son is killed in his space shuttle because of Spider-Man not being at his launch in this reality. Then they cut to J. Jonah Jameson, and I am not going to read his dialogue in a J.K. Simmons voice due to it not fitting the tone of the scene. My son was a hero. A real hero. Not like those clowns with superpowers. The world will remember him that way. I just don't understand why the real heroes always have to die. Then we cut to Peter Parker with his Aunt May and Uncle Ben. He is very excited and says he has wonderful news for them. He ends up revealing to them that he is Spider-Man and that he has powers. Uncle Ben tells him he is wrong for wanting to drop out of school and to be a movie star. He tells him he has an obligation to help humanity and that he should not waste his life in Hollywood. Peter gets mad and storms out. Aunt May says they have lost him. Uncle Ben says no, that he'll see it eventually. Then we cut to the next scene. And so Spider-Man left a life behind him as he took off for Hollywood in his first major motion picture. He gets out of a car with a blonde-haired girl in a Spider-Man tank top and a blue skirt. Then a reporter named Foswell comes up and asks Spider-Man if his movie encourages children to injure themselves trying to imitate his feats. Spider-Man responds, Wait, my spider sense tells me you've got to be from the Daily Bugle. Am I right? Then everyone laughs at Foswell, and everyone else there is adoring Spider-Man. Then we cut to the Daily Bugle, where Foswell tells Jameson about what happened. Jameson replies, They'll be laughing out the other side of their mouths soon. I'll fix Spider-Man. I've still got the best news staff in the country, and I'm going to hit him where it hurts. Miss Brandt, get me that boyfriend of yours. What's his name? Ned Leeds. And stop goofing off. She responds, But it's my coffee break, Mr. Jameson. Jameson responds, What? In my day, we didn't have coffee breaks. We didn't even have coffee.
What a load of malarkey. I happen to be a Civil War buff, and coffee existed as far back as that. There's no way Jameson's old enough to live at a time where there was no coffee.
Then J. Jonah Jameson orders Betty Brant to get Ned Leeds to find out Spider-Man's identity. Then we cut to weeks later where Peter stands in a mirror and I just noticed something. I had forgotten this, but he's still wearing glasses. He should have stopped wearing them at this point as he never needed them after getting his powers. Weird decision. I suppose it's because he thinks he looks better with them, but still. Anyway, he mentions having given money to Aunt May and Uncle Ben, but it seems to be implied he never actually reconciled with them. They don't appear at all the rest of the comic. Then his associate comes in and tells him some bad news. He hands him a newspaper. Jameson has found out Peter Parker is Spider-Man. Peter gets really angry, but not because it will cause Aunt May and Uncle Ben to be in danger, but because he planned to have Spider-Man's identity be revealed in the next Spider-Man movie. Yeah, I know, pretty petty, but that's how he is in this reality.
As far as I know, a superhero movie like that has never been done before. I have a longtime friend named Tom who thinks Sony should just do Spider-Man movies outside the MCU and some of their own movies about Superman villains, but just have Spider-Man jump in when they commit a crime and fight against them. Then some of them are defeated while others escape. I like that idea. Anyway, back to the comic.
Peter declares he will get back at Jameson, so he sends a bunch of men with guns into the Bugle to act like they are hired thugs there to threaten Jameson. Jameson insists he is the copy boy. They tell him they want him to talk to their boss. Then Spider-Man comes in and at first acts like he is going to kill him, but instead he gives him a Best Reporter award, but Jameson gets the message. Then he goes to the Fantastic Four and gets them to agree to making movies with him. He also does the same with the Avengers and the X-Men, though this is taking place before all the more popular X-Men characters were a part of the team. Though this comic, funnily enough, came out a year before Rogue's first appearance. Anyway, he also goes and visits Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, who, believe it or not, exist in the world of the Marvel Universe and publish their own comics in it, but with made-up stories about Spider-Man and other Marvel superheroes. Peter buys out their company. Then we cut to Daredevil chasing this older guy in a white shirt. As you see, Daredevil is wearing a yellow and red costume with just a single D on it. Not kidding. This is his original costume when he was created by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko. The man he is chasing is a mobster known as the Fixer, who killed his father for not losing in one of his boxing fights he set him up for. Yeah, in the original comics, Kingpin started off as a Spider-Man villain, and Kingpin did not become a Daredevil villain until the early 80s when Frank Miller started writing Daredevil and when he also created Elektra. Yeah, Elektra hadn't existed till the 80s, and in 1963 Stan Lee and Steve Ditko had Karen Page be his main love interest. Anyway, back to the comic. This mobster Daredevil chases ends up having a heart attack and dies. This other guy who was with the mobster rats out on everything he did. This happens in the original Daredevil comic too, by the way. Then Daredevil walks outside and Spider-Man is up high on a building and calls out to him. He asks him if he wants to make a movie for him. Daredevil says no, till Spider-Man points out it would work in his favor since he is a vigilante who acts outside the law. So he agrees. Then, in the next scene, Spider-Man has his people make Daredevil the new costume that he would eventually make himself in the original comics. But he gives him a purple cape and a pitchfork. He tells him his original costume was bad and that he must be colorblind. Daredevil thinks to himself that he is blind, but he will not tell Spider-Man that. But he also tears off the cape and throws back the pitchfork at Spider-Man, angrily telling them that he hates them. Spider-Man tells him that is fine and asks if they are still friends. Daredevil says they are still agent and client. Then we cut to Daredevil swinging by a billboard that advertises the movie Spider-Man and Daredevil are in. Then we cut to Jameson, who is once again writing an article against Spider-Man and his new hero Daredevil. The press becomes against Spider-Man because of this, and Spider-Man declares to find dirt on Jameson by going to the Bugle. Then while there, he sees Jameson's secretary Betty Brant get into a car with some mobsters. He puts a spider tracer on the car and follows it. He ends up discovering a mob leader named the Big Man is in the building they are in. She is paying the money because her brother owes them a debt. And so he leaves and goes back to the office. He calls the Daily Globe and talks to Mr. Bushkin there. He tells him that he has found out the reporter Foswell, who works for Jameson, is Big Man. He tells him to write the story the way he says. Then the next page is a Daily Globe article with the headline Crime Syndicate Run from Bugle Offices, and another article written by Bernard Bushkin titled Should Jameson Resign? Then to Jameson, who is looking tired and rough smoking a cigar. Robbie Robertson walks in and tells him that the head of their board, Lawrence Dyson, is here to see him. He tells him he will see him in the morning, but then he is told it is morning. Lawrence walks in and tells him the board wants him to resign. Jameson gets mad about it, but then he leaves saying he is resigning. Then he is outside in some rain with an umbrella, thinking about how the Bugle was all he had left after his son John died, and how he has lost it too. A man comes up to Jameson and tells him Foswell wants to see him tomorrow. Then we cut to the next day, where Jameson angrily tells him that this whole thing is his fault. Foswell tells him he's got every right to hate him, and that he's not asking for forgiveness. He then tells Jameson that it's really Spider-Man's fault that he can give him the resources to get his revenge on him. I'm going to skip the next scene and cut to the set of a movie Spider-Man is making with a giant robot that looks a bit like the Scorpion but with a tan color. Then Spider-Man comes in to stop the robot, but an electrical charge comes out of the robot, almost killing him. Daredevil comes in and swings Spidey to safety. Later, Peter is with some women in bikinis in front of his swimming pool at his home. Daredevil is there and tells him he could have been killed. Peter insists that it was nothing. Then Daredevil tells him word on the street says that there is a hit on him by the mob. Peter asks why anyone would want to kill him. A manager he hired comes in and he tells him to fire whoever was responsible for the robot electrocuting him. And then Peter says to his manager that it is time for his workout. Daredevil says he is coming with because he believes he needs protection. And so we cut to Peter at his workout, which is just him fighting against a bunch of regular people. He easily takes them out, until Kraven the Hunter comes up and slashes him with a metal claw from behind. Then Daredevil smells poison on Peter and immediately tells everyone to leave the room. Peter is angry and tells Daredevil he is paranoid. Daredevil responds that just because he is paranoid doesn't mean he doesn't have any real enemies. Then we cut back later to Peter in his bed at his home that has a giant model of a spider on it for some reason, and that is told by Daredevil that all the fighters are in custody, but they could not find which one of them slashed his back. Then Peter asks why anyone would want to kill him since he is just an actor and producer. He says he doesn't have an enemy. Then the next day at a board meeting, when discussing robots, Daredevil smells spirit gum and latex and realizes everyone in the meeting is wearing masks. He says to Peter that something is wrong. Then they fall through a trapdoor. Then they realize they are standing before a bunch of supervillains. The cloaked man says, "Allow me to introduce you to Electro, Dr. Octopus, the Vulture, Mysterio, and the Sandman. They've been paid a lot of money to kill you, you little twerp. You're going to pay, Parker, for everything." Peter is scared, but Daredevil tells him he has faced some of them before. He said this is why he became a crime fighter. Daredevil goes to fight them, but then he is beaten up. Daredevil pleads to Peter to help him fight them. Peter is too scared to. Peter says to himself, "He's being killed, and it's all because of me." Then he says, "No, you won't die. Spider-Man won't let you." Then he goes and fights against them all. He hurls Doc Ock into a wall and then goes against Mysterio, who reveals to him that he was the one that put the electrical charge on the robot to try to kill him. Peter uses his spider sense to punch him away while declaring that he is fired. Then he faces against the Sandman and ends up defeating him with his web fluid, which is mixed with glue. And then he goes to Daredevil and asks him why he felt he had to sacrifice himself. And the Watcher in the narration says that he is barely breathing. Then he confronts the cloaked figure and takes his mask off. It of course turns out to be J. Jonah Jameson. Jameson, while crying, says, "You can't have won, Parker. You're a villain. How can you win when you've destroyed my life, my son, my newspaper? Only heroes win, and you're a villain." Spider-Man thinks, "He's right. I did destroy this man. It's my fault. I had a chance to do something good with my powers, like Uncle Ben said. Instead, I used them for greed, destroying a man's life and nearly causing another's death." Then the comic ends with the Watcher saying, "And so, even in this reality, a tearful youth named Peter Parker learns that with great power comes great responsibility."
This comic is actually pretty good. It tells a good alternate tale of Spider-Man and how he uses his powers for greed. Next time, though, we'll be looking at a way darker what-if comic on what would happen if Daredevil was accidentally killed by the Punisher. See you then.
I hope you enjoy all these pictures a cousin of mine drew years and years ago. You can If you look closely, you can see his name and the year that he drew them on them.